I used a fake profile to meet with men while I said I was going to therapy. My husband discovered it, created a fake profile, and execution a brutal and tragic revenge. My name is Regina, I am 38 years old, and I have been a housewife for almost my entire marriage. For almost 2 decades, I was married to Fernando, a 42-year-old man, owner of a used car dealership. Our marriage, from the outside, seemed stable, even enviable. A big house, 2 teenage children, family trips, weekend dinners with friends, happy photos on social media. It was the kind of life that most people dream of building. But inside me, a part of me had been silently rotting. It was not something that happened overnight. It was an accumulation of frustrations, of swallowed words, of ignored desires, and of an emotional silence that was becoming deafening. Fernando has always been a good provider. He worked hard, sometimes too hard. He would come home tired, exhausted, and when he had time, he wanted to rest instead of talking. I, who spent my days between the supermarket, the laundry, and worrying about my children, felt invisible. I began to notice that he looked at me less, that he barely understood when I cut my hair or changed the decoration of the room. And what is worse, I began to feel that I could disappear for a whole day and that he would not even notice. We tried couples therapy for a while, but he gave up after the first few sessions. He said it was something for people with free time and that we just had to try harder, but I was the one who was always trying. It was in this emotional hole where the desire to be noticed, loved, and heard began to take root. At first, there were harmless searches in forums and random readings about alternative relationships. Then came the videos, the stories, the secret groups on social media. One day, in a burst of silent adrenaline, I created my first fake profile. I did not use my name or my city. I chose the name Isadora, an invented woman, sensual, simple, and free. I posted photos I found online of a brunette woman with wavy hair. A guy I always wanted to be. It was just curiosity, I told myself. Just a game. Nothing serious. The feeling of being in control was like a new drug. The compliments came in minutes. Men of all ages, profiles, and intentions filled my message box, as if I were something valuable, desired, something I had not felt in a long time. I began to respond shyly, laughing at the bad pickup lines, but over time, I let myself be seduced by the attention. It was addictive. With each conversation, I felt more alive, more powerful. It was as if Isadora took Regina's place. And, seriously, I preferred her. It was easier to be loved than to be ignored in my own house. Over time, I stopped just talking. I began to flirt, to make video calls, always being careful not to show my face. I learned tricks to hide my identity. I downloaded secure applications. I created alibis for therapy sessions and mothers' group meetings. I began to leave the house wearing different clothes than what he saw, and still he did not notice. A whole day away from home and Fernando just asked me if I had remembered to pick up the bread or pay the electricity bill. This only fed the certainty that my marriage was dead and that I was the only one who was still trying to seem alive. The face-to-face encounters began with a married man. It was risky but also safer. He also had something to lose. We used to book accommodation in motels in the neighborhood, far from where we lived. He asked me questions, praised my body, and said he had never seen such a sexy woman. It was all a lie, of course, but at that moment it seemed true. Then came others, and then others, and finally I already had 3 different profiles, with 3 different women, who created parallel narratives. Somehow, I would manage to keep it all going. It was a kind of lie that grew like a web, and I was already trapped in it without realizing it. It was not until I met a different profile, a man who seemed calmer, more observant, and who asked me unusual questions, that something began to get out of control. It was as if he were studying me. And I, foolish and needy, approached him, without noticing the signs. But I will tell you that part later. When I realized it, I already had it, 3 women living inside me, and none of them was Regina. I was Isadora, Mariana, and Leticia. Each fake profile had a specific personality, a way of speaking, of seducing, of attracting men like a magnet. The photos I used were carefully selected. Stock photos, stolen fake profiles, edited and blurred parts of me. I learned to move like a professional liar. I used encrypted emails, password-protected messaging applications, and never left any obvious trace. I felt as if I were mastering a game that no one else knew existed. I was a lover, an actress, and a strategist, all in one. My meetings began to become frequent, 2, 3 per week. Sometimes I saw 2 men on the same day. Cheap motels, cars in shopping center parking lots, rooms rented through applications in remote neighborhoods. I always had an excuse ready for Fernando: therapy, mother's group meeting, volunteering at church. He never questioned, and that hurt me more than if he had spied on me, because his silence was the proof that I was invisible. One day I came home with my makeup smeared, sweating, with my hair still smelling of a man's perfume, and he simply asked me if I had picked up the brown rice. That hurt more than I admit. I started recording videos. First, just my voice. Then of my body. I sent it to some of the men as proof of exclusivity, as a way to keep the interest. One of them asked me to film the meetings, and I accepted. I placed my cell phone in strategic positions and recorded everything: moans, touches, the raw and dirty betrayal. I looked at myself later, alone, as if I were watching a woman who is not me, an erotic and powerful alter ego. I began to use these videos to seduce other men, saying that it was exclusive material, and it worked. Many paid. Yes, I started receiving money. Nothing scandalous, but enough to make me feel valuable again. The woman who cooked rice, took care of the children, and held back tears at the kitchen sink became an anonymous porn star in private internet groups. And I loved it. I loved the power, the excitement, the feeling that men were waiting for me, wanting me, moaning my name, even if it was an invented name. And at the same time, I hated coming home and seeing Fernando sleeping on the sofa with the television on low volume, as if nothing were happening. I walked naked in front of us, and he did not even look up. This pushed me back into the addiction, because yes, it was an addiction, a bottomless pit. Over time, I began to lose myself. I confused the names of the profiles of the lovers. I confused the schedules, giving the same audio to 2 different men. Still, no one suspected, neither they nor my husband. The real Regina was disappearing little by little. I no longer knew what it was to look at myself in the mirror without feeling disgust or shame. But still, I could not stop. It was like an addiction to adrenaline, to seduction, to being someone. I did not just cheat on my husband, I was betraying myself. And still, I thought I could control everything, that I was too smart to get caught, that no man could fool me, until one of them appeared, a different one. The way he spoke, the way he was interested in what was between the lines, the way he did not insist on seeing my face, the way he seemed to already know me, he praised me, but without flattery. He asked questions that made me feel uncomfortable, and that excited me. It was as if someone were finally looking at Regina. And without knowing it, that was when I created the perfect trap for myself. When Lucas's profile appeared, I was already tired of the standard men, all needy, predictable, wanting quick nudes and encounters in cheap motels. But he does not. Lucas was silent, observant. He did not ask obvious questions, he did not praise my body directly, but he would say things like, "You sound sad when you talk about your routine," or "That tone you use when you say you love your husband sounds fake." That disarmed me. For the first time, I felt as if someone were digging into my soul, not just my body, and that was like a new drug. I began to tell him things I had never told myself. I talked about my dissatisfaction, about the loneliness in my marriage, about Fernando's coldness, about the boredom that was slowly killing me. He listened, or rather, he read everything with a kind of attention that made me feel important. I began to trust him, to the point of telling him that I was being unfaithful to my husband. Without saying names or exact details, of course, but I talked about the meetings, the lies, even the videos. And he said that he understood, that he did not judge me, that many people lived in dead relationships and that I was simply trying to feel alive again. God knows how much I wanted to believe that. I began to send photos, first more sensual, then more explicit. Finally, I even shared a video from behind, blurry but real, of one of my most recent encounters. He said I had beautiful hands, that my body looked at peace in that scene. It was poetic, different. I began to fall in love with that profile, for the calm, for the care, for the way he said that perhaps meeting me in person would save me from myself. It was as if he had appeared to show me that I was not just a dirty woman. I felt that he was my refuge, without realizing that he was actually my mirror. It took me weeks to accept the meeting. He insisted, but with elegance. Never forced. When I finally arranged the appointment, it was in a discreet restaurant, far from home. I chose a neutral outfit, nothing flashy. I was nervous, but excited, as if it were a date with someone who could perhaps rescue me from the mud. He said he would wear a blue shirt. I entered the restaurant. I looked and I saw him in the back, sitting with a glass in his hand and a calmer face than he should have. Fernando, my husband, in the blue shirt. I froze. My whole body stopped. My blood evaporated. My stomach turned to iron. At that moment, everything fell apart. I knew it. He did not need to say a single word. He simply looked at me in a way I had never seen him before. A look without anger, without screams. It was worse. It was the look of someone who already knew, of someone who was waiting for the theater to end, of someone who organized everything and just came to see the result. I wanted to run, to scream, to disappear, but the only thing I could do was turn around and leave. The sound of my heel hitting the floor sounded like a siren of shame, and his face, that look, would haunt me forever. I drove home like a zombie. I did not cry. I did not think, I just breathed, because it was automatic. I thought he was going to leave me, that he was going to destroy me, that everything was going to explode. But when I arrived, he was not there. That scene in the restaurant was the end. There was no argument, no slap, no scandal, just that look in his eyes, dry, cold, as if he were watching the last chapter of a series he wrote himself. I ran out of there with a burning face and my heart trying to escape from my chest. I waited for him to come home that night, to scream, to confront me, but Fernando never came back. He took the essentials and disappeared from the house as if he had evaporated. No message, no note, just silence and a void that screamed in every corner of the house. I thought he had given up on me, that he would leave me alone with my guilt, that he would disappear forever. But no, he did not leave me. He began to hunt me. Days later, the first sign, a message on my cell phone. Hidden number. It was a screenshot of a conversation I had with a lover. Explicit intimacy and a short phrase, "Beautiful Isadora." My blood ran cold. I tried to think it was a coincidence, but deep down I knew. He was watching me from somewhere. He was observing me. His game was not one of an explosive revenge. It was surgical, and it was just beginning. The cell phone has become a nightmare. The other day I received a frame from a video I had recorded with one of my lovers, a video that only existed on my device and in a secure cloud. And now I realize that it may not even be that secure. And the most terrifying thing is that this happened to me while I was having dinner with my children. I had to hold back the scream in my throat, smile at them and pretend that everything was fine, while hell opened up under my feet. Fernando had disappeared physically, but his presence was more suffocating than ever. Now he was a ghost with access to everything. The nights became long, unbearable. I woke up startled by every notification. I began to suspect that there were hidden cameras in the house. I spoke little and barely ate. And still, he tried to keep up appearances so as not to scare his children. I even began to lie to them, telling them that my father had traveled for work. But inside, I knew. He was close, just no longer visible. He was a predator in the shadows, and I was the prey who was still trying to pretend that I could escape. The evidence began to fall into the wrong hands. One of my lovers, who is married, called me, panic-stricken, saying that his wife had received prints, videos, and even the location of the motel. His wife went to his work and made a scene. And he, of course, blamed me. He said he was going to report me, that he was going to destroy my life. I denied everything, but I knew exactly who was behind it. It was Fernando. One by one, he was taking down all my secret partners with surgical precision. I was trapped in a game of dominoes where each fallen piece was a mistake for which I was being accused. The worst part was that I could not tell anyone. If I revealed it, I would sink completely. So I stayed quiet. And that was what he wanted, to isolate me. I am suffocating with guilt, shame, and fear. I no longer had a husband. I had an invisible executioner who knew every hole in my soul and was now finishing my ruin. I did not know if the worst part was the guilt or the certainty that it was not over yet. It was the following Tuesday when I received the second desperate call. Another of my lovers, an older businessman, called me in the middle of the night screaming, "Are you crazy?" My wife received an email with a video of us. "Who gave that to you?" I hung up without knowing what to say. I wanted to cry, but my body no longer listened to me. I was in survival mode. The day before, a third lover blocked me without any warning. I later discovered that his wife had access to the conversations we exchanged, photos, audios, everything. Fernando was not just punishing me, he was destroying everyone involved with me, one by one. With each new day, the tension increased. My cell phone has become a weapon against me. Every vibration was a threat. A lover who lost custody of his children. Another, threatened with dismissal for a leaked video. A third had his car spray painted with the word adulterer. And I was the common thread of all this destruction. I was the virus that infected every part of that network, and Fernando was the antibody, the vigilante. I began to have nightmares in which he watched me from the window motionless, just watching me sink. And the worst part, I knew it was not over. He was beginning to dismantle me. I began to avoid leaving the house. I was afraid of who might be watching me. I lived locked in my room, with the cell phone in my hand, trying to delete everything, messages, videos, conversations. But every time I thought I had cleaned everything, something new appeared. It was as if he had access to my digital soul. I even changed my number and bought a new chip. The next day, the first message arrived on the new number. "Do you really think you can hide from me what is already mine?" Signed with a skull emoji. It was the first time I cried out loud since the restaurant, and it was not my fault, it was panic. I even thought about getting a lawyer. But how? What was I going to say? My husband is getting revenge because I cheated on him with half a dozen men and sold intimate videos on the internet. There was no defense, there was no protection. I was cornered, without morals, without allies. My children noticed that something was wrong. One of them even asked, "Mom, is Dad coming back?" And I did not know what to answer. I began to have silent anxiety attacks, tremors in my hands, constant insomnia. I took sleeping pills and still I woke up scared. The shame had become flesh within me. And the worst part is that he never appeared. He never knocked on my door, I never sent a direct message, but I saw his fingerprints on everything. He was the one who called the wives, who created the fake profiles, who spread the screenshots. Fernando has become something I never imagined. The man who knew me so well that he knew exactly how to destroy me without raising his voice, and he did it with refinement. Nothing public, nothing flashy, just calculated, specific, and efficient damage. He wanted me to fall apart on my own, and it was working. At that moment, it was no longer just shame, it was a real fear. The fear of how far he could go, the fear that someone might die, the fear that he was planning something even worse. I began to wonder if any of my lovers would be capable of doing something crazy. I had a horrible thought. What if someone committed suicide because of me? But it was already too late to stop everything. Fernando had pulled the trigger of an emotional weapon that could no longer be deactivated. And the next bullets, I knew they would be for me. What tormented me the most, I think, was not knowing who would be next, because the days have become a countdown to the next scandal. And it was a Saturday morning when the bomb really dropped. I woke up with notifications on my phone. Town gossip group. Local newspaper headline, "Married man is found dead after leak of intimate videos." The name was there. He was one of my lovers. His wife found out about everything, left the house with the children, and he could not take it. He committed suicide in his own garage with a shot to the head. I read the news with a tremor. The world turned to dust. At that moment, I literally vomited. I ran to the bathroom and fell to my knees. I vomited everything I had trapped in my stomach since the restaurant. The bitter taste of guilt, the smell of blood that I did not see but that I felt running through my hands. I tried to call Fernando. I called about 10 times. I sent messages begging. I asked to talk, I asked for forgiveness. I cried without being able to breathe. But he never answered. Not a line, not a word, as if he were invisible or as if he were waiting for the world to punish me for it. And, in a way, it really was. After that, the house became a tomb. I avoided my children. I walked like a ghost. I slept on the sofa and barely ate. The walls seemed to crush me. The sound of the door that no longer opened at night, the silence of the empty room, everything was a reminder of a man who had destroyed and who was now returning the destruction to me without laying a finger on me. I felt dead inside, but at the same time, the fear would not let me die. It was a living punishment, a slow torture. I really asked God to erase me from the earth, but his punishment was to leave me alive and conscious. I began to have outbursts. I woke up screaming in the middle of the night. I saw Fernando in the hallways. I heard notification sounds that did not exist. My head was a battlefield. I began to take sedatives, anything to sleep, to forget, to disappear, but it did not work. The faces kept appearing, the videos, the photos, the blood, the wives, the messages, everything. An eternal loop of shame. I could not even look at myself in the mirror anymore. I avoided my own eyes, because they judged me more than anyone. I thought about running away. In truth, go to another city. Change your name, disappear. But that was cowardice. It was exactly what I always was, a coward. Facing it was the only option, but fate, as always, is more cruel than any human plan. The invitation came on a rainy afternoon. One of my oldest lovers, Andres, a 45-year-old married financial manager, asked me to talk outside the city. The leaks moved him. His wife had kicked him out of the house. I was losing my job. He said he wanted to understand how everything came to light. I hesitated, but my guilty instinct spoke louder. I wanted, at least, to try to help someone or, perhaps, to redeem myself. I do not know. I accepted. We arranged to meet at a gas station and take his car to a more remote place. Stupid. Still believing that something can be fixed. Inside the car, the atmosphere was tense. He had dark circles under his eyes and was nervous. His hands were trembling on the steering wheel. I tried to stay calm, but I was in pieces. He asked in a low voice, "Was it you who sent that to my wife?" I denied it. I said I had no idea how it had gotten out, but he did not believe it. He said that maybe Fernando was involved, and I froze. I looked at him and said, "Andres, Fernando knows everything and he is doing this to each of you. I am also a victim." At the same time, his face changed. A mixture of fear, desperation, and guilt. He began to speak quickly, confused. He said he was afraid of losing his children and that his ex-wife threatened him with accusations. He said he would commit suicide. I tried to calm him down. I screamed. I asked him to stop the car, to breathe, but he stepped on the accelerator. The road was wet. The curves were tight. I begged him to stop. He cried, he trembled, he screamed, and then everything went black. A dry, loud noise. A turn, breaking glass, bending iron. When I opened my eyes, the car was destroyed. On its side, my head was throbbing. Blood was running down his forehead, and Andres was dead. His face still haunts me. Eyes wide open and glassy, bloody hands on the steering wheel, the ambulance siren in the distance, the shouts of the curious. Everything seemed like a silent movie. At the hospital, they said he died instantly. I survived, with multiple injuries and a deep cut on my face that would require surgery. And there, between morphine and heartbreaking memories, I received a visit from fate. A nurse entered with an envelope. "Your husband left this to be delivered to you in case something serious happened to you." It was a folder with documents and a letter from Fernando written. I opened the papers with trembling hands and saw there, in front of me, the final warning. Proof that everything that happened had already been predicted by him. Fernando did not need to move a finger to crush me. He simply handed me my own poison. And, before even reading the letter, I knew that the real sentence was not in the accident. It was in the words that would come. But I could only face that the next day. It took me a whole day to be able to touch that envelope again. It was in the drawer of the hospital room, hidden like a ghost that I did not want to release. But the pain of the facial surgery, the constant sound of the heart monitors, and the memory of Andres, dead next to me in the car, kept pressing me. I needed to face it. I needed to read what Fernando had left. When I finally broke the seal, I felt as if I were opening my own emotional death certificate. It was his handwriting, that firm and organized handwriting of the same man who once wrote "I love you" on notes stuck on the refrigerator. "Regina, if you are reading this, it is because some part of you survived. You are lucky, or perhaps a punishment." That is how it began. Every word was a knife. He said that he knew everything. Long before the restaurant, that he had already begun to suspect when I changed clothes in secret. I used the cell phone too much, and I left with rehearsed excuses. He said that he did not want to believe it, who fought against the distrust, but one day he decided to take a look, and when he found the profiles, the videos, the audios, he did not feel anger. He felt mourning, as if he had died before touching another man. In the letter, he said that he created Lucas's profile long before he invited me to the restaurant, that he spent weeks talking to me, allowing himself to hear what I said about him behind his back. Who saw the videos of my meetings? Who knew about the payments? Who mapped out the lovers one by one? I studied you as you never had the courage to study yourself. And then I decided not to scream, just to let you fall one piece at a time. He revealed that he sent the emails, the prints, the videos, that he spoke to some wives as an outraged guardian angel, all done with method. But the worst was yet to come. Fernando confessed that he still loved me, who for months thought about forgiving, about starting over, but every lie I told to his face, every forced smile, every unconvincing excuse, killed another piece of love. He said that he did not want a public revenge because that would be petty. He wanted me to feel what he felt, the slow death of trust. And he ended with a warning: now you have the rest of your life to live with yourself. I have just helped you put the mirror in front of you. Along with the letter came the divorce papers. All signed. No claim for alimony. Without demanding anything. He did not want my money, my explanation, my presence. Only my eternal silence. His signature was the most brutal end to the story that had begun. I cried for hours, but they were not tears of love. It was the pain of the truth being exposed. I betrayed him, and he buried me alive with words. Fernando won, not with punches, but with silence, with calculation, coldly, and with the truth. I read the letter more than 100 times. Today it is wrinkled, stained with so many tears, but I still carry it with me, because it is all that is left of him and all that is left of me. Today I live alone, in a small rented apartment in a part of the city where no one recognizes me. I moved away from everything, from friends, family, children who went to live with their paternal grandmother and only see me from time to time. I have scars on my face that not even makeup can hide. The deepest one runs down my left cheek, cutting my smile in half, as an eternal reminder of who I was and what I did. The mirror is cruel. He does not just show his face, he shows his soul. And mine is gray, full of holes, like an abandoned house after a fire. I no longer work. Who would hire me after all? A housewife turned amateur adulteress in videos who destroyed families and caused the death of a man. I became a name whispered in the hallways. A story that wives tell to scare their friends. Do not become a Regina. My name became a warning. I live on small favors, on the rest of what I managed to sell. And even that feels heavy, because every object I sold had a story that I do not want to remember now. Even the sofa where I slept, even the cutlery I used for dinner. Everything punished me with memories. At night, I dream of men. Not the lovers, but with Fernando and with Andres, the sound of the accident, the noise of the impact, the open eyes of a dead man and the silence of a living person who abandoned me in life. I dream of wives screaming, children crying, cell phones vibrating with screenshots that are forever leaked. Sometimes I wake up and think that I am still in the car. Sometimes I wish I were. I have thought about ending it all, but I cannot, because I believe I deserve to stay here. To be remembered, punished, cursed, alive, but broken. Every day I open his letter, I read it again. I cry in the same parts, I hate myself in the same phrases. And I ask myself, why? Why did I waste such love? Why did I sell my soul in such cheap pieces? But it is already too late. No one forgives a woman like me, not even God, I think, because he watched everything and did nothing. He just waited for the end. That came like a storm. And now all that is left is the wet ground, the cold, and the memory of the thunder. The worst part is that sometimes I still miss the old Regina. The one who really smiled. Who would get tickets from her husband and dance alone in the kitchen? But this Regina died. I killed her. And today I live like a ghost, without smell, without shine, without anything. A ghost that haunts its own body. And the cruelest thing is to know that I dug all this myself. With every message, every lie, every encounter, every fake profile, it was a shovel of dirt. And today I live in the cemetery that I built myself. Because in the end, it was not men that I destroyed, it was me and only me. At least, they really died. I am still here. Dying a little more each day.